Do you believe in regrets? Like, have you ever had a regret in your life where something happened, and you looked at it and you're like, the way it turned out isn't quite the way I wanted it to. I kind of wished I did something different or something different happened. Like, have you ever had a regret? Because if you're like me, maybe you've went through certain self-development books and you try to have an optimistic look on life, or you've been through periods of being overly optimistic, and you say, no, I've never had a regret because everything that occurred to me in my life has made me who I am today. Like, it's a good statement. It's optimistic. It seems like a healthy way to deal with life experiences. But in my view, I think I've decided that I think it's a flawed idea, because it presumes that who we are today is the pinnacle of who we potentially could be. Otherwise, of course, you have choices that you made that you had the knowledge and awareness to make differently, and you picked the wrong one. The reality is we don't ever really know what the alternative choice could have led to, whether for better or for worse. So I get there why there's an argument to not have regrets, but there's a lot of situations in life where we can be pretty certain that the other choice would have been better in hindsight. And that's what I want to talk to you about today. Because recently, in the past week or so, I've come to have a pretty large regret. And so it's been on my mind, and I've really been battling with whether or not I want to call it a regret or just, dismiss it as an experience. I moved to Edmonton, Alberta. You'll know that if you watched the last video. And it gets really cold here. So right now it's about negative 25 degrees. I'll put what it is in Fahrenheit somewhere on the screen here. It got cold. And the cold here is different than it was back in Ontario. And so when me and Danielle went out for a walk, I brought gloves. Because I knew it was gonna be cold. But when we ultimately got food and we're on our way back, we were waiting for the bus. So it was only gonna be what we thought was 5 minutes. So I was holding it with my hands without my gloves on. My gloves were in my inner jacket pocket or my backpack. It got pretty cold because the bus was late. We got on the bus. I thought, okay, my hands are gonna warm up. I'll just get out there, walk 10 minutes home quick, and we'll be done. Well, I got off the bus and I started walking, again, without no gloves on, and it got cold, and kind of got to the point where it's like, it's cold, but I can deal with it for the next, 7 minutes. And when I got back, went into a warm room, had a blanket around my hands, and that was it. Because I've been cold before. I've lived in cold places a long time. But this time, when after a few days, I started noticing these like changes in the detail of my hands, and just kind of like wrinkles on the tips. Even when I haven't been in water, the sensations of the fingertips are kind of like reduced. It's weird. Like I would never be certain what type of texture I'm touching if I wasn't looking at it, because the sensation is so reduced. I was trying to figure out what caused this. Anyways, long story short, I think the cold caused it. I think I got like some type of close to frostbite, and I'm curious now. I don't know. Is it gonna ever go away? Because my skin's kind of peeling a little bit. I'm wondering, will it peel and will the cells rejuvenate themselves and it'll be back to normal? Or my hands permanently look like they're 20 years older? And when I was thinking through this situation, I was like, like, do I regret that? I guess the experience, look at the bright side, have a positive, and it's like, nah, you know what? Let's be real with this. Like, do I think that I'm gonna regret this if it doesn't heal? Could I live with it? Absolutely, it's fine. A little bit of reduced sensation, I guess, fine. But do I think it's a regret? And I think, yeah, I decided it was. I knew better. I had the gloves with me. I knew it was cold, I was prepared. All I had to do was go into the bag or go into my shirt and take that small inconvenience and put them on. But I just said, no, I'll go through it. Instead of doing what I knew was right. I let my ego to just get through it without putting my gloves on outweigh the part of me that knew, like, no, you should probably put gloves on. If your hands get too cold, frostbite's serious. And so after thinking about it, I decided, I think there is such thing as healthy regrets. And acknowledging it is healthy. Yes, absolutely, it's unhealthy to mourn over that situation, that outcome you didn't like for months and years and allow it to affect your life, to prevent you from moving on. Yes, it's unhealthy if you are shaming yourself and losing your respect for yourself just because of that situation. Yeah, that's all very unhealthy. But there are healthy ways to go about it. And I think a lot of people would be able to grow and develop a certain level of self-awareness and understanding of themselves if they look regrets to the face and decide, okay, it's okay to have regrets. It's not some self-improvement industry thing where we have to not have regrets because blah, blah, blah. Like, we don't have to do that. One of the reasons I think having regrets holds value is because it gives you a reference, an experiential reference to reflect on when making further decisions, and they compound in each other. The more experiences that you can look in the face and come to terms with, the more experiences you have to reference to make better decisions in the future. It's like when you're playing a game and as you do a task or you go through an experience, you get like experience points, right? And those experience points allow you to do better in the future with your defenses and your offenses. In other words, like your choices, right? And if you don't get those experience points, maybe you do the task halfway, you get nothing. So it's not enough to go through an experience. You have to be able to reflect on it, look it in the face and be okay with it, come to peace with it, come to terms with it. And then it gets added to your experience points, right? It allows you to learn off of it and gain value from it. Like, how do you learn from an experience if you just write it off as saying, meh, it made me who I am, so I guess there's no reason to reflect on it and see if there's any value I can pull from it in hindsight, right? It's like you play a video game and then you die, and then you get to redo it over. And you learn from it. You see where you went wrong. You see where you could have stepped a little bit earlier or stepped a little bit later. It's giving you a second chance to reflect on it and learn. It feels like the older I get, the more I'm not a fan of rose-colored glasses. Like when you're younger, like you're taught to be optimistic. The world, you have all the opportunity in the world and go forth and conquer and all that stuff. But it's like when I have the opportunity to look something in the face and come to terms with it, I want to do that. I want to be able to shine a flashlight in all the dark corners of my being and figure out how to be better. And you can't do that if you can't look at situations that didn't come out the way you liked it and say, oh, kind of take accountability for it, acknowledge it, like, yeah, I could have chose differently, and I had the ability and the awareness to choose differently. I had all I needed to make a better decision, and I let whatever get in the way. And acknowledging what got in the way. I don't know, maybe it's just me. I think that there's a lot of value in doing that and learning from it, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's not unhealthy to have regrets. I do want to give some things that I've kind of listed out in my mind that would help me determine if something is a healthy regret. First of all, like, it has to be something that you were in control of and had the ability to change. It doesn't count as something outside of yourself, like external to you happened and it was a situation that you didn't like. Like if you get hit by a car when you were walking on the sidewalk as you should be, you can't look at that as a regret because it was out of your hands. There's no responsibility to be taken for it. You can't really learn from that. It wasn't your fault. Like, you have to be able to acknowledge that you knew better than what you did, and then understand like why, what got in the way. Like if you're walking down the street and you walk by a police car and you decide to pick up a rock and throw it through the window, you didn't like the outcome because you got arrested and you're probably in jail. But also, you knew that was a bad idea. So what got in the way? By the way, I'm totally not speaking about from personal experience, but figure out what got in the way. Do you have a certain emotion that caused your actions despite your logic and rationale? Okay, well then you have a regret and you're able to figure it out. You've done some therapeutic work with yourself. Okay, that's great. We're trending towards a healthy regret, and you have to be able to come face to face with it. It's not a healthy regret if every time you look at it, you shudder. You have to be able to get to the point where you can look at that regret, that experience, and be okay with it, be at peace with it. If you're constantly battling it, then you're not going to have the calm and the serenity to look at it and pull the value from it that there is to pull from it. And the regret can also act as a healthy reference. As human beings, like we're wired to make decisions based off of the accumulated knowledge we've attained over however many years from our past experiences, and try to use that information to make the best decision, right? The subconscious and conscious mind does that. And so if you're able to kind of stand on it and make better choices as a result of that, well, now you have a healthy relationship, a healthy regret. So we don't have to be scared of regrets. We don't have to shudder at the thought and the reflection of an experience and disassociate ourselves so much that we refuse to look at it and admit that we could have done better. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you less of a person or less capable or less learned. None of that stuff. If anything, to me, acknowledging regrets is a sign of maturity. It's a sign of development and acceptance. It's personal growth. It's self-discovery. I would say that most people, if not virtually everyone, has had regrets. But they've either been taught or they subscribe to this idea that any regret is inherently unhealthy. And so they deny them because they were led to believe that all regrets are destructive. And if they acknowledge it, then they're causing destruction upon themselves. It's not true. It's a psychological like booby trap. And we set it ourselves because we buy into this idea, this philosophy of a sort. Most things in life is about perspective. Your perspective determines the outcome, because the outcome is based on how you feel about that and how you're able to use and the value you got from that. So if you have a positive perspective on regrets, it impacts you positively. If you have a negative perspective on it, then of course it's going to affect you negatively. And guess what? We're all doing stuff that we kind of knew better. And so if you can't come to terms with regrets, then you're kind of closing yourself off from being able to develop as a person. I hope this realization helps you as much as it's been helping me the past couple of weeks as my hands hopefully heal. But if it doesn't, I've come to terms with it. It's a healthy regret, and I'll move on. If you enjoyed this video, you can check out this playlist right here. Got some of my past videos I think you'll like, and I'll see you in the next video.